Congratulations, you finally hit level 50 in Throne and Liberty, and it's time to start running all of the dungeons. Like me, you may be trying to figure out the best way to navigate the voice chatless hellscape that is Throne and Liberty looking for group, or in simpler words, the Dungeon Finder. Instead of typing the strategies to your group until you develop carpal tunnel, this video is going to be the one-stop shop overview of every boss in one single video. Before we kick off into it, if this video helps you in any way, please be sure to leave a comment and drop a sub. We stream live most days of the week, and I'd love to have you join the community. We are actively recruiting on the Juniboat server, NA East, if you guys are looking to join the guild. With that, let's get started with the first boss of this video, Karnix, who is found in the Death's Abyss dungeon. His most common attack is a slam that sends out an expanding shockwave. It's best for the tank to position the boss facing the wall to avoid teammates taking unnecessary damage. The tank can easily avoid damage by left-right strafing around the boss as close as possible. Alternatively, if you are playing with a staff, you can use your smokescreen ability at the last minute to avoid damage completely. You will notice that one of the abilities needs to be shield blocked. Most of the bosses in Throne and Liberty have an ability similar to this, and to be honest, we're not going to be covering that as I think that's common knowledge. You'll notice 3 players have a skull that's floating above their head, and this signifies that a flying scythe is going to be hurtling towards you. Now you can morph and run away from it, but you do need to keep in mind that you'll need stamina, because after the scythe finishes its rotation, we'll need to stack up as a team. We're going to take some unavoidable damage, followed by an ability that needs to be shield blocked. In terms of level 50 dungeons, I personally think that the trash mobs leading up to the boss are actually harder than Karnix himself. If you follow these steps correctly, you'll find yourself getting an easy win. The next boss up on the list is going to be Lequirus, found in the Cave of Destruction. Lequirus will spawn red and blue ants, and if you kill these ants, they'll leave a massive area of effect on the ground. So I think the simplest way in taking care of them is either kiting them around the boss or using some sort of CC, stun, or icebound tomb to lock them in place until they re-enter the ground, essentially being a mob that you can kind of completely ignore. Eventually, you'll notice the boss will kind of jump up into the air. When he does this, you need to run to one of the 3 pillars scattered around the boss room. On top of one of these pillars is going to be a gem ant. But as you're running to it, you'll notice that there's an egg on top. You want to make sure that you stand just beneath the top of the platform, and then you need to wait for the egg to explode before proceeding to the top. Failing to do so will result in you being pushed off the platform and one-shot by the boss. Eventually, you'll notice a larva spawn on your head, and this can be kind of tricky because I've noticed that if you're close to someone, you need to kind of step away from them and then go back toward them in order to defuse the larva. Running into a teammate with a larva will defuse the larva on both of you. Those are the main aspects of the fight, and guys, I want you to understand that you can look up these bosses individually and you'll find an 8-minute video on them. They're a lot simpler than that. People try to make it a lot more confusing than it actually is. These are literally the steps that you need to take in order to get a successful win against Lequirus. Next up on the list is Toublek, and he resides on Tyrant's Isle. Shortly after you begin the boss fight, he'll drag all of your teammates toward him, turning you into a rat. You want to run away from the boss, and you'll notice a red aura above your head. When you see this, you want to click the first button on your hotbar. For me, it's number 1. This will put you under the ground, and then you'll notice the boss would do a huge area of effect attack. After he does this, you want to click the first ability on your hotbar again, which will allow you to emerge, and you want to run to one of the flowers that are around the boss. It's a good rule of thumb to assign positions to each flower before the boss fight starts. This next one can be pretty hard to see, but essentially the boss can drop a meteor from the top of the center of your screen, and it goes straight down to your feet, leaving a little area of effect, and then explodes into a big area of effect in pretty quick succession. This does a lot of damage, and you definitely want to be moving if you see it. The last mechanic you need to worry about is the geysers, and you'll notice at a point in the fight they start kind of boiling up or steaming. When you see this, you want to run to it. If you don't, you'll get one shot by the boss. Just be sure to glide down and not take fall damage. Assuming you can execute a few easy mechanics, you'll find yourself taking him out pretty easily. Next up is Magna Duke, and he is on Butcher's Canyon. Throughout the fight, you're going to need to dodge fireballs that come from the sky, and eventually the boss is going to drag everyone toward the center of the room. One player will be shackled and unable to move, while the remaining players are able to start moving. You want to morph and jump over the flame barriers toward the outside of the circle of the boss room. Near one of the pillars, if there's an AI, you want to take it out, and then the player that was shackled near the boss will turn into a sheep. You need to use team coordination to pass the sheep along without touching the flame barrier. It looks like this. If you don't notice any AI, you'll need 2 teammates to go to each red pillar and interact with them, essentially freeing the trapped teammate from the center of the boss room. Ooh, he barely made it. He's going to have a wave of flames that starts from the outside of the boss room, collapsing in. As soon as you see this on the outside of your screen, you need to jump. You tend to have enough airtime to stay in the air as soon as you see it, so it's best not to wait until the last second. If you're able to execute these mechanics properly, you'll find yourself easily taking out the boss. Following Magna Duke, we're going to have Rex Chimaerus, located in the Temple of Slaughter. Throughout the boss fight, he's going to launch pools of acid at your feet. He likes to time this with a stun that he applies to one of the team members. This stun is signified by a green glowing aura, and if you notice that you have it, you need to move to the outer ring so that there's room between you and the boss for teammates to fit in between. Essentially, after a few seconds, he'll lock you in place and he'll launch 3 fireballs directly at you. These need to be tanked. Now, typically, we would do it with the tank taking the first 2 and a melee DPS subbing in for the 3rd fireball. However, there are scenarios where the tank can do all 3, or you can have a different person take each fireball. This fight, it's very important to adapt. Eventually, launch pythons will be summoned around the outside of the room. You want to approach these pythons from a certain angle so that way you hit the second one at the proper angle headed toward the chandelier in the center of the room up top. At the top of the chandelier, there's going to be something that you can interact with. This allows the chains on each of the 4 pillars beneath you to be interacted with, dumping water on the boss's head, stunning him, and allowing for some free damage before the boss fight resumes. This fight can be pretty tricky, don't get me wrong, but like I said earlier, most of these boss fights don't need a 10-minute explanation. If you do these couple of steps, you'll find yourself defeating Rex Chimaerus with ease. The final level 50 dungeon boss that we need to cover is Shaikal, and he's on Cursed Wasteland. This boss can be really tricky, so I'm going to go ahead and put a poorly drawn graphic on the screen to show you guys the positioning for the beginning of the boss fight and the positioning that you want to maintain throughout. The whole party is going to be in the sector to the left of the tank. The reason for this is because the boss is going to do a purple breath attack that he spreads throughout the boss room. If the tank is on the rightmost side of his sector, when the boss begins this breath, the tank will rotate clockwise to the left, ending at the left side of the sector that we began in, while the remainder of the party moves on to the next sector to their left. In this random group, the tank was just struggling super hard and kept running into the energy beam, but he did have enough room to not run into it. His positioning was just a little bit off. Our healer was able to heal through it, and it was okay. But just remember, You want to keep a visual on where these sectors are, so when they reappear, you don't get stunned. As you just noticed, he'll also launch a dark aura underneath the feet of a few of the players, and you need to move out of it. The last mechanic to worry about is a red orb that'll suck you toward the center of it, dealing a lot of damage. This is signified by a small glowing red orb above your player's head. If you notice this, you need to run to the back center of the sector until the red orb disappears. The moment it disappears, you need to morph and dash away from it, going back toward the boss, leaving the red AoE effect in a place where it won't impact the other players in the sector. Congratulations, you made it through the cursed wasteland. You know, they say time is money, and money's pretty important. So I hope you guys appreciate me making an efficient guide, because I'm tired of seeing these 10-minute videos for something that can be explained in 30 seconds. These bosses are not that difficult. You can defeat most of them in green gear. So the thing I think to take away from this is that you need to focus on mechanics and less about dealing a ton of damage. I think a lot of players get locked into looking at their hotbar and they get distracted of what's actually important, and that is surviving. Guys, if this video helped you, obviously drop a sub for me, leave a comment for me, and if you don't mind hitting the like, that would be fantastic. Thank you guys. Catch you later.